This weekend, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 sped into theaters, so it's time to rank the three Sonic movies and the Knuckles miniseries from worst to best. In last place is the Knuckles series. I think the show is just okay. It's watchable. Idris Elba is great as Knuckles, and the villains, while they aren't as good as Eggman, were still kind of fun. But I think that this six-episode miniseries that runs for about 3.5 hours probably could have been reduced down to a 2-hour movie. The show also focuses way too much on Wade. Like, the show is called Knuckles, not Wade. It's like how Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka were just set up for Mandalorian Season 3, or they were basically Season 5 of Star Wars Rebels. They don't really focus on the title character, they focus on other side characters. And I don't think the stakes of the show were all that interesting. The last couple of episodes focus on the bowling tournament, and yeah, that's kind of boring. Now, Knuckles has some funny lines, and the show has some good world building with the quills and why the villains want Knuckles' quills and what they can do, but this doesn't quite reach as high as it could. But for a streaming series, it's pretty high budget. It does look cinematic, the CGI is really good, almost on par with the movies. I just wish the plot were as cinematic as how the show looks. Number 3, Sonic 2. I had a lot more fun with the first one. I thought the first one was a lot more entertaining and the story flowed better. This one, there were a few things that stood out. Like I said, Idris Elba's Knuckles, he's awesome in this. He's imitating and funny, and there were some fun action sequences. There were some lines that were kind of witty, but the story of the movie is so bogged down by the second act. The first act is great, the third act is fun, but everything in the middle is so uninteresting. The film takes a huge detour from the Sonic story about the Chaos Emeralds to give us like 10 or 15 minutes of James Marsden at his friend's wedding, and it's so boring and unfunny, and it really pads the runtime. And even then, some of the stuff involving Sonic and Tails kind of pads the runtime. Like, we don't have time to expand the lore of the Sonic world and explain more about the Chaos Emeralds and do interesting stuff with that, but we do have time for a dance battle. There's just so much filler in the second act, which really brings it down. But it does pick up a bit with the third act. The climax of the movie feels straight out of a video game or cartoon, and it was entertaining. I did do wish we had more of that stuff for the rest of the film. But they do have one issue with the third act, though. Sonic is apparently afraid of water, and this is never set up, and it comes out of nowhere. The human characters in the movie are boring, and the film focuses way too much on them. Number 2, Sonic. They actually tried hard on this movie. This came out at a time where video game movies still didn't have a great reputation. This was like the pre-Mario era, so everybody was kind of like not expecting this movie to be good, especially because the trailer was so heavily disliked because of how Sonic's design, where they delayed the movie to fix it. And even then, people still really weren't quite sure what to expect with this. But it ended up being really good, especially with Jim Carrey's performance as Eggman. He's channeling his Riddler performance from Batman Forever. Now, I'm not sure how accurate it is to the games, but for what it was, I was highly entertained. And in first place is Sonic the Hedgehog 3, a movie that was so anticipated that everybody was harassing the studio to release the trailer. Months of speculation over who would voice Shadow the Hedgehog. Jim Carrey comes out of retirement to play Eggman again, and it was totally worth the wait. And yes, it is the best of the trilogy. Now, like I said, I'm not someone who knows a ton about Sonic, so I'm not sure how accurate the lore of the movie is, but the way they wrote Shadow as a tragic character was compelling. It's definitely the darkest of the trilogy. Like, there's one scene that had me shocked that it went that dark. And I'm not going to spoil it, but if your kids are sensitive, you should look up a content guide to see if your kids can handle it. The kids in my audience didn't seem too affected by it. In fact, by the end of the movie, they were standing and clapping, but every kid is different. Now, the tone of the movie can be a bit all over the place at points. On one hand, we have Shadow, who is this dark character with a dark backstory, and then we have Jim Carrey being goofy. But speaking of Jim Carrey, as usual, as the other two films, he's great in it. But there was one joke that pulled me out of the movie where they break the fourth wall by acknowledging that he's playing two characters in the film. Now, in a movie like, say, Spaceballs, for example, that would fit, but here it's really jarring. And there's also a quick reference to the movie Speed, which stars Keanu Reeves, who voices Shadow in this movie, so a little bit too much meta humor going on, kind of pulled me out of it. And the plot is a little bit all over the place, because there's this MacGuffin storyline about two keys that are needed to trigger a device, and it takes inspiration from spy movies, and I felt like I'd seen it before. That being said, kids and adults will enjoy it, but more so kids. And there you go. There is my ranking of the Sonic movies and the Knuckles series. Let me know what you thought, and let me share your ranking in the comments.